James Hacker. I wanted to ask if you hold any respect for any Scientologists' point of view. From what I've learned, Scientologists are so indoctrinated in a particular way of thinking that they cannot possibly think for themselves. This especially includes politics and their apparent support of Trump. I've also figured out that certain prominent Scientologists, such as Kirstie Alley, are pro-life, based on her Twitter feed. This leads me to believe that she has absolutely no knowledge of the Sea Org pressuring women to have abortions. Is this another example of Scientology manipulating their followers? What do you think? Hey James, this is really good. There's this is a pretty beefy question here. You've thrown a lot of stuff at me, and let me break it down this way. Yes, I do hold respect for Scientologists' point of view on issues that are not Scientology related. If a person who was a Scientologist was also a molecular biologist and had something to say about molecular biology that was on his discipline and that was actually science-based and real, I might have something, I might listen to that person. I'm not going to exclude everything they say just because they're a Scientologist. However, we have to be aware of how Scientology affects people's point of view across the spectrum of life, as you pointed out. And it is not that Scientologists are so indoctrinated that they can't possibly think for themselves. I'd like to actually take a moment to be really super specific about how Scientology or other cultic belief systems affect a person's ability to think, because I think this is important as a point of differentiation. It's not that people who get involved in destructive cults can't think for themselves. It's that they are given a specific set of rules and guidelines through which they have to filter all of their thoughts. And this is a slightly different thing, but it's an important distinction. You're always thinking for yourself. There's nobody else doing your thinking but you, okay? So when somebody else is controlling your thinking or, engaging in thought reform or mind control or there's all the stuff we're talking about, what they're doing is they're getting you to agree to a certain set of filters or biases or prejudices or principles or rules or guidelines or beliefs, whatever word you want to use. They're all pretty much the same thing when it hits the neurons. But they're getting you to adopt a certain way of thinking. And when you adopt a certain way of thinking, then that's going to affect, how you look at all kinds of things. If you adopt, for example, the idea or belief that you are a spiritual, immortal being who has lived near infinite amount of time in the past and will live infinitely into the future, if you have that as a core belief and you agree to that, you're going to see all kinds of things from a very different point of view from the kind of person who doesn't believe that. And that's just a core belief. There's a whole pile of beliefs that Scientology brings in that they pile in on you. And once you start accepting one and then the next and then the next, and then it's easier and easier to accept more and more of them. And after a while, you just sort of see the world the same way L. Ron Hubbard did. In a way, You'll never really see the world the way L. Ron Hubbard did because you're not L. Ron Hubbard, right? You are you. You have your own background, education, knowledge, and experience. So everything is always, through your lens, but you have all these, like I said, you put these filters in place. So when it comes to things like Trump, well, not all Scientologists support Trump. They're not mindless automatons. It's just that they have been given a set of values that are pretty conservative values politically. They're pretty classical conservative. In that they are, views that were expressed by L. Ron Hubbard in the 1950s and 60s, for the most part. That's when most of his lectures happened. So that's the time period when most Scientologists are being indoctrinated into L. Ron Hubbard's point of view on politics. And then they translate that to now, and that translates to people like Trump and the GOP and that sort of thing, for the most part. Okay, so that's why they tend in that direction. Kirstie Alley may or may not know that that Sea Org members have been pressured into having abortions, and she might still be pro-life. And while that might sound incredibly hypocritical, and it is, it's also, it speaks to what I'm talking about here, because Kirstie Alley can have a personal belief that that babies should be born and that abortion should never occur. But because she's also a Scientologist, she has a very core belief that Scientology is the single most important thing in the universe, not just on this planet, but anywhere in existence. And that the Sea Org, right on the heels of that belief, is another belief that the Sea Organization are the custodians of L. Ron Hubbard's legacy. They are the ones who deliver the OT levels and, are charged with the security of the Sea Org and with safeguarding Scientology and keeping Scientology working forever. So she views the Sea Organization as the Jedi Knights of the universe. She views them as the pinnacle of ethical authority and embodying everything that Scientology is supposed to be. That's the Sea Org to most Scientologists. So the Sea Org can't really do any wrong. And if they do wrong, if they do something that seems to violate some basic moray or ethic of the world or of common sense or of Scientology, well, they're the Sea Org. They have their own policies they operate on. They are executing L. Ron Hubbard's command intention, and as expressed through David Miscavige, of course. And so they're on a whole different playing field than Kirstie Alley or any other person is on. So the rules they operate on are different than the rules everybody else operates on. And so therefore, if Sea Org members get pregnant through some moment of incautiousness or personal issue or something, and they have to deal with that by going to get an abortion so they can stay in the Sea Org, well, clearly that's the greatest good for the greatest number. So clearly that's okay. Abortion in that case, that's acceptable, right? This is all the gyrations that go on up in the head of Kirstie Alley. One possible scenario, of course, I don't know what Kirstie Alley really believes, but this is what I'm describing to you is absolutely what Scientologists in general would do if you confronted them about Sea Org members having abortions, versus the pro-life stance of Scientology or L. Ron Hubbard or whoever. So you see how this kind of goes is you can rationalize anything. That's the amazing thing. That's the amazing function that this brain here serves, is that it's able to rationalize anything. So we really kind of need to get over being so shocked and awed and surprised at what people believe anymore, because we kind of understand at this point that anything goes up here. So logic ain't got nothing to do with it. When you have accepted, and taken in and fervently believe, certain core things, you will wrap all the other data you receive around those beliefs. That's what it means to have a core belief. So that's, how Kirstie Alley can be so hypocritical and yet in her own mind is not hypocritical at all. And if you call her a hypocrite or come after her for that, she's just going to brush it off because she doesn't see herself that way. And this was something I only fairly recently realized, because I thought, the hypocrisy of some of these things might be a really good avenue to utilize in pointing out the flaws to people. But, then I realized how the thinking goes, and I went, oh yeah, no, that's just that, really that's just virtue signaling to your allies. When you're pointing up the hypocrisy of another, group's belief system or something, you're really just talking to your own people. The other side doesn't think that, so that's not going to get them. Oh, gee, let me think about that for a minute. It might be seed planting in some cases, but in most cases, it's not going to be very effective. So anyway, just a little, probably more than you were asking for on this question, but I thought that might be a better angle to answer the question on, because I thought it might be more broadly applicable to all kinds of situations and explain what you were asking about at the same time. I hope it did. Thank you.